He has spoken on the topics faith, family and freedom in Cuba, Belgium, Brazil, Congo, UK and all over the USA to crowds from 14 to 40,000. International leadership speaker, trainer and coach. Author of Learn to Raw Leadership, Attitude Hack, Live a More Excellent Life, 5 Battle Strategies of a Victorious Warrior. 2021 President's Lifetime Achievement Award recipient. Founding partner of the John Maxwell team. Toastmaster International Speech Competition semi-finalist. Founder of Tell It Like It Is TV, ThatGuyRocks.com and ThatGuySpeaks.com. Creator of Story Power TV, Transforming Grace TV, and Leading Leaders Podcast. Producer of 4 TV programs and podcasts for Liftable TV and World Trumpet Television as well as multiple social media channels. Please help me welcome J. Loren Norris.
You know, sometimes a story that we hear, well, it's just that, it's a story. Maybe it's a fable story. Maybe it's a fictional story. I mean, you probably read at some point in your life a fictional novel, even if it's just a small one. I think the very first book I read cover to cover was about 42 pages, and I think it was called The Black Stallion or something. I was a little kid, not even 10 years old at the time. First book I ever read cover to cover. The next one that I read cover to cover was over 300 pages, also a fictional novel. It's a story. It's just a story. Or is it? What I want to ask you today, and I want you to consider, and what we're going to talk about on Leading Leaders, is what does it mean to lead the narrative? What does it mean to lead the narrative? Today on Leading Leaders Podcast.
Subscribe now for our extensive video library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom.
I'm J. Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast. And I want you to know that every narrative has something behind it. Or first off, it has behind it a collection of stories. Not one story usually, but a collection of stories. Why? Well, because a collection of stories gives you that kaleidoscope effect of looking at a issue, an idea, an agenda through multiple lenses. The beauty of multiple lenses is that if you can point to the same idea, thought, notion, agenda through multiple lenses, you really have supported the point or the idea of that main agenda, that main point. It's easier if there are 30 people who agree about one topic, who are willing to speak to that one topic from their life stories, from their experiences, from their viewpoint, their perspective, and everybody point back to the same idea. Because the more people there are who support that idea, who will agree with that idea, who will promote that idea, the stronger the agenda will be to actually build buy-in with other people. It doesn't seem real complicated. I mean, we remember our parents saying, well, if everybody is jumping off the bridge, would you jump off the bridge? Well, Mom, we're not thinking about jumping off a bridge together. We all just want to go to the movie together, or we all want to go roller skating. How old is that? Together. We all want to do something together. And the more people who are, everybody's going to this party, everybody's going to this cookout, everybody's going to the lake. The more people there are who have the same idea, the same notion, that are moving in the same direction, the more powerful the movement. See, the challenge that we run into is that sometimes the movement is falsified. Yeah. Sometimes the point, the destination, the where we're going isn't real at all. I mean, the idea, the notion, it exists in somebody's head. They really do want to see that utopia, for an example. And they sell everybody down the river, so to speak, to go toward that utopia, to move in the direction of that utopia, to get to that destination. But it doesn't yet exist. I mean, I know people in the world that I'm in the world of information and self-development and personal development and leadership and communication, who will tell you straight up, don't build the program until you get a lot of buy-in, whatever the program is. throw the idea out there if you have a notion for a program, but don't actually build the program until a lot of people are already going in that direction. And then you can let them tell you what they want in the program. Okay, see, that's leading the narrative, though. You're baiting people in a direction to go in a direction to buy a certain thing. It's like you hear them on the radio all the time. Hey, come to XYZ Ranch and buy lakefront property. And when you drive out there, you're like, why do I feel like I'm imposing on somebody else's ranch? I mean, I see a body of water out there in the middle of this ranch, but there's not even roads out here. How can I be building my dream home on a lakefront property when the lake is just a pond in the middle of somebody else's ranch? Well, sure, it would be waterfront property if I built my house right here, but it doesn't feel like a community to me. Well, it's because they're leading the narrative, and usually with a really nice custom home at the main entry, with all the sales brochures that have already been drawn up to look like the homes are all gathered around the lake, and kind of perspective ideas of what that would be like. That practice is absolutely necessary. In fact, I'm going to tell you this. In your own life, if you don't have a vision for your future that looks like one of those planograms for a new community, when they say to you, oh, it's going to be built around the golf course, it's a planned community. It's going to look like this, and the houses will look like this, and the minimum standards will be this, and there will be no buses parked here with the windows painted in, or no manufactured homes, no tiny houses. The minimum square foot is 2,000 square foot. Whatever kind of parameters they set so that you can decide that's the place for me. If the vision for your life isn't that detailed, if you haven't thought through the plans of your own life, your business, your relationships, your education, your own personal training, if you haven't gone through that exercise, then you are not leading the narrative of your own life. By that I mean the collection of stories that point forward for you, well, they're not there. If you've wandered through your life, not wondered, wandered with an A and not an O. If you have wandered through your life from one destination to another, from one dream job to the next dream job, from one dream home to the next dream home, from one dream relationship to the next dream relationship, and you're still not satisfied with your life, it's because you don't have the vision of the planogram of what your life is going to be. You have not supported that with the stories that will lead you to that conclusion and lead you to that place. And I can tell you, there are a whole lot of people in life who have just kind of meandered from one place to the next, from whatever situation they found themselves in. They're guided more by the circumstances than they are by a destination. Now, don't get me wrong. There are a lot of people, too, who have what we would call a destination disease. They are thoroughly convinced that when I get here, when I get that kind of car, live in a house in that kind of neighborhood, have that kind of job, that kind of income, and a spouse who looks like this, I've arrived. I'm all done. No. You can never stop growing. But to get from the place you are today to the place that you're designed to be, you're going to have a collection of stories from your own life. Stories that you have already lived through that you can look back on and go, okay, here's what I learned from that. Here's the reason I tell this story. It reminds me of what I once was. I am no longer an addict. For 25 years, I was an addict. When I tell the stories about what it was like to struggle with addiction, that's to remind me what I once was. That's looking in the rearview mirror to say, I'm not there anymore. That's not me. But I'm very clear on who I was when I was there. I also have those stories of the progress along the way. Why? Because they're pointing to the big idea of where I'm moving toward. I also have those stories of what life will be like when we get there. Not because there is the final destination and there is all we want to achieve, but because that's the next step in the destination. Think about it this way. If you're taking a long road trip and you're making a journey from, say, Houston to, I don't know, Utah, Park Cities, Utah. Maybe you want to go skiing, right? So you're making a trip along the way. You've got a couple of destinations that you want to stop in. You want to stop in Midland, Texas, for God knows what reason, because, I don't know, maybe you want to smell the oil wells. Maybe you want to stop at the Grand Canyon. It is on the way. Yes, it is on the way from Houston to Park Cities, Utah. So if you say, well, I'm going to stop in the Grand Canyon, you might have traveling companions with you. Maybe it's your kids or your spouse or just a bunch of buddies. And you say, well, we're going to stop at the Grand Canyon. They're like, why do you want to stop at the Grand Canyon? It's like a hole in the ground. Well, technically, yes, it's a very large hole in the ground. But if you've never seen it, you've never experienced its magnificence, the majesty of standing at the edge of the Grand Canyon and some of those observation points and realizing it's like 2 miles to the bottom. That's enormous. You can't throw a rock across this gap of rocks from one side to the other. And when you look across and you see the sun setting, the colors are incredible. And the depth, where literally as the sun is coming up and when the sun is going down, there are parts of the canyon that are just black because the light doesn't reach them. It's mind-boggling. Or is it a hole in the ground? See, the story helps to paint the picture of what you should expect to see when you get there. A picture's worth 1,000 words. If you have a photograph of the Grand Canyon, well, that takes you even farther. Someone could see that picture and go, oh, so this is the place we're stopping on the way. What a brilliant idea. I really think we should do that. In fact, I think I'll really enjoy that. I want to get some photographs at the edge of the Grand Canyon. Beautiful idea. That's why it's on our journey. It's going to be a beautiful place to stop. We're not moving there. We're not moving to the Grand Canyon. We don't plan to live on the rim of the Grand Canyon. That's not the plan. The plan, though, is to go past the Grand Canyon to our next destination. I know you're following this analogy, and you're wondering, what in the world does that have to do with leadership? Everything. As the leader of an organization, as the leader of your own life, the collection of stories that you tell about where you came from to where you're going are the narrative that drive your organization. I don't care, again, if you're talking about just leading your family, leading a nonprofit organization, leading an international NGO, leading a multinational corporation. If the collection of stories that you tell about yourself to your employees, to your investors, to the people on your team, if that collection of stories doesn't address from where we started to where we're going, then you're not leading the narrative, you're letting the narrative lead you. Now, that narrative might be outside influence on your industry. It might be that you have completely changed the course of your business plan, your business model, your product suite, the things that you offer, the way that you market, the people you communicate to, even your target audience. You've modified all of those because outside voices, outside influences have told you that what you have to offer is no longer wanted. Now, there are some companies that have had to make that adjustment, and life has changed the story for them. I'll give you one example. You've seen a Toys R Us lately. Now, their slogan was brilliant. Their process was brilliant. One of the first things that I remember about Toys R Us was that you could go into the Toys R Us store and there was basically a sample of every toy that a kid might want to buy. And you could turn your kids loose in there for the most part and let them play with everything before you bought it. Which is brilliant when you consider some of those toys are $60, $70, $85 worth of toy that the kid may get home, take it out of the package and go, I'm more fascinated with the package. The brilliance of Toys R Us was to say, experience it while you're here. Play with it before you leave. Get to know what it's like, if that's something you want or not. And yet, Toys R Us didn't adapt to the coming digital age. There were no opportunities to order online with the efficiency as, say, Amazon. And so Toys R Us, not having a vision that matched with Amazon, kind of went by the wayside as a primary retail store. Much to the chagrin of many parents who would love their kids to be able to touch and play with a toy long before they decide to invest in it. And some of these toys, you basically got to take out a loan. If you try to buy a Power Wheels lately, holy cow. Yeah, it's basically a mini Tesla with less build quality. The idea, though, that you have a direction in your life that's going to be adapted and modified and changed as you go. That's just reality. That's life as we know it. If you're going to move forward in life, you need to have a collection of stories that you look back and you go, it's where I came from. You should also have a collection of stories that says, this is where I'm going. I heard of a place once, described San Diego. I've been there. It was beautiful. Standing on the harbor, taking pictures of the boats in the water. I have some great photos off the beach of San Diego and around the harbors, around the naval base. Beautiful shots, beautiful photographs, beautiful memories. That destination, though, doesn't look anything like even the best lakes in Dallas. Completely different. Wow, that was a sneeze that I wasn't expecting. The idea of being able to plan your future, though, it's going to be all based in those stories. Now, let me tell you something else the narrative does, though, when you're the leader. When you're the leader, the narrative drives the type of people that surround you. Remember, I said it's like the kaleidoscope. When you know what the agenda is, when you know what the destination is, what you're looking for is a collection of stories that come around, and they all kind of fit together in a different way. They overlay each other, and they're different colors, and they're different perspectives, and they're different angles on life. And the purpose for getting that kaleidoscope of stories that are all pointing toward the same destination, the same agenda, is knowing that as you do that, you build buy-in. And as you build buy-in, you build agreement. And as you build agreement, you build synergy. And as you build synergy, you build community. And around a notion, an idea, a destination, a planned path, a planned community, you have people who hear the story and they go, that's where I want to be. That's where I'm going. They recognize this picture that you are painting and they want to be a part of it. Maybe they join in through advocacy. Maybe they join in through financial support. Maybe they buy in and literally buy a house on the water, or literally buy part of the community, or literally help fund the process to get there. Maybe they buy stock in your company. But without the kaleidoscope, without the one target, without the stories that build to that, to talk about how people are involved in it and what benefit they've had from it and where you've come from. Yeah, see, those stories are about the qualifications for why you're here. When all of that comes together, then people kind of hear from a distance and they're like, that sounds like a great idea. I want to know more. And the closer they get, the more stories they hear that all point in the same direction. And the more stories they hear that point in the same direction, the more they're following the narrative that you've laid out. But I'll tell you right now, most people wander through life. They don't have a narrative. They don't have a vision. They couldn't tell you that the Grand Canyon is on their way to their final destination because they're not even sure where it's at. They do have a belief, many of them, that that destination, when I do find it, when I do get there, everything's going to be better. There'll be no more challenges and no more problems. And that's, well, it's false. That's a false hope. But it is a reality that if you will begin to control the stories in your life, choose the ones that you're going to tell yourself and tell the people around you, that not only builds your self-image, it builds your brand image. And when those two things are strong, the direction you're moving in will be strong. The narrative about your final destination will become clearer and clearer. And the more people who gather around and tell a very similar story to your destination story, the more you've built the community, the tribe, the movement, that not only will help you get there, but they'll go along with you. You'll build the synergy that's necessary to succeed. When you've got that kind of buy-in, when you've got that kind of community, your movement will thrive. Your destination will be achieved sooner. I think it was, I want to use a quote, but I can't tell you who the original was. I heard it from John Maxwell. He said, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with others. If you want to see your destiny, if you want to see the achievement for what you were put on this earth for, if you want to see a movement move toward where you're going, begin to lead the narrative with the stories that you tell until you build buy-in, synergy, and community. That's what leading the narrative is for. That's what it means. I'm Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast for Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day.